Some stories they're so tragic, they're deeply unsettling. This is one of those. It's about Skylar Neese, a teenager whose murder wasn't committed by some stranger in the dark, but, and get this, by the two people she trusted most in the entire world, her best friends.
And that's really the question here, isn't it? How could that possibly happen? It's a question that challenges everything we think we know about friendship, about trust, and about the darkness that can hide in plain sight.
So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about Skylar Neese. She was a really bright 16-year-old, an honor student, worked a job at Wendy's, and she had dreams of becoming a criminal defense attorney. By all accounts, a pretty typical teenager. But then, one summer night back in 2012, everything changed.
Okay, so the apartment complex had this surveillance camera, right? And it caught the very last moment Skylar was seen free. And the footage, it's just chillingly simple. You see her climb out of her window, she gets into this car that's just waiting there, and poof, she's gone. There's no sign of a struggle, nothing that looks like foul play. It looks like she went completely willingly.
So, in the days that followed, you can imagine a frantic search kicks off. But here's the thing. Right from the very start, there was this huge disconnect between what the authorities were suspecting and what Skylar's family knew in their hearts was true.
And this is so important. The police, they pretty much immediately thought she was a runaway. And because of that, no Amber Alert was issued. But her family, they knew that made absolutely no sense. She'd left her phone charger behind, her contact lenses. These are tiny details, right? But they're the kinds of things that just scream, I'm coming right back.
Well, the investigation kept going, and eventually they identified the car from that surveillance footage. And this is where the story takes a really dark turn. Turns out the car belonged to Sheila Eddy, one of Skylar's closest friends. And when the police questioned her, she admitted picking Skylar up, but claimed she just dropped her off about an hour later, right near her home.
Can you even imagine? This just shows a level of deception it's horrifying. Think about it. Sheila Eddy, one of the last people to see Skylar alive, is right there, actively helping with the search. She's comforting the Neese family, she's handing out missing person flyers, all while knowing the devastating truth.
So for 6 long, agonizing months, the case just goes cold. Nothing. The family is holding on to any hope they can find, but the truth was so much worse than anyone could have possibly imagined. And the break in the case? It didn't come from some brilliant police work or a secret tip. Nope, it came from a complete and total psychological collapse.
The breakdown came from Rachel Schoaf, Skylar's other best friend. Apparently, she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. After she had this nervous breakdown and ended up in the hospital, she spilled everything to her lawyer, who then called the police. And just like that, the horrifying truth was out. She and Sheila Eddy had murdered their best friend, Skylar.
And Rachel's confession? Wow. It laid out this whole plan that was just chillingly premeditated. This was no crime of passion. Not at all. They showed up prepared. I'm talking knives, a shovel, bleach, clean clothes, the whole 9 yards. They lured Skylar out, pretending they were just going to go hang out, drove her to this remote spot they knew, and then, on the count of 3, they attacked her.
So the big question is why, right? And the motive that Rachel Schoaf gave police, it might be the most shocking, most disturbing part of this whole thing. It wasn't over a boy, it wasn't about money, it wasn't some huge dramatic rivalry. It was simply because they didn't like her anymore, and they didn't want to be friends. That's it. So with that confession, the awful, agonizing search for Skylar Neese was finally over. Rachel literally led the police right to the spot in rural Pennsylvania where they had left their friend's body, hidden under some branches almost 6 months earlier.
Okay, so the truth is out, Skylar's body has been found, and now the case shifts gears from investigation to prosecution, and everyone's focus turns to what's going to happen to her 2 killers.
So here's how it played out. Rachel Schoaf, the one who confessed, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and got a 30-year sentence. She'll be eligible for parole after 10 years. Sheila Eddy, on the other hand, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. But, the story doesn't just end there, with them behind bars. What happened to Skylar actually exposed this huge critical flaw in the emergency alert system. And her family, they fought like hell to make sure no other family would have to go through the same kind of agonizing wait that they did.
Which brings us back to that really important question from the beginning of all this. Why wasn't an Amber Alert ever issued for Skylar?
Well, the answer is kind of buried in the legal red tape and the strict rules they had back then.
Basically, the system failed Skylar because her case just didn't tick the right boxes. For an Amber Alert, they needed to believe there was an abduction. But remember that surveillance video? It looked like she left on her own. Plus, for teenagers, there was this mandatory 48-hour waiting period. So because the police pegged her as a runaway from the start, the very system designed to help find her couldn't even be turned on.
And that is where her legacy really begins. It's called Skylar's Law. It was passed in West Virginia, and it completely changed the game. It gets rid of that strict requirement for proof of a kidnapping. Now an alert can go out for any child who is reported missing and is believed to be in danger, period.
This law was signed just a few months after Skylar's body was finally found. It's really a testament to her family's incredible fight for change, and it's how they managed to create something powerful, something positive, out of an absolutely unimaginable tragedy.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really haunting question. See, this case wasn't about some random monster lurking in the shadows. It was about friends, neighbors, classmates. And it really forces us to ask a tough question. How does a community heal when the monsters aren't strangers, but people from right inside your own circle? And how well can you ever really know the people closest to you?